Hey everybody, Emmy speaking. Can I just say that Cave Story's hard mode is brutal? Like, extremely brutal. Okay, that's enough deaths, you can stop! I think the fact that 90% of late game enemies and projectiles, heck, even most of the enemies at the start can kill you in a single hit is enough to turn away a lot of people from wanting to even attempt hard mode. Before now, I'd only completed hard mode once. I must have been out of my mind because I decided to make this run the run that I would get some of the missing achievements that I hadn't gotten yet, like getting the machine gun, and of course, beating the good ending with the Mimiga mask. But even then, I had to get the only +5 health upgrade in the game in order to beat the final boss because of the sheer amount of stuff that's happening on screen during the fight. Unfortunately, I'm the type of person that gets super tunnel vision when I get really focused on something difficult, which causes way too many death to things like the Undead Core's spinning projectiles, Misery's fish missiles, and even Sue's one damaging attack at times. At the time, I had to give up on the 2-3 HP achievements, Unbeatable and Unstoppable, until my eventual easy mode playthrough, since a huge chunk of the enemies couldn't kill me in a single hit now. But something felt wrong. Sure, I was eventually able to get those achievements, and it felt good to finally do so, but something kept gnawing at my brain. I had to go back to hard mode and prove that I could beat it with the Mimiga mask and only 3 HP. Even if there wasn't an achievement in store for me, I just needed to prove to myself that I could do this. Now, there may be more than I was able to find, but there were only 3 videos I could find on YouTube that showed that it was possible. One of them having 8 HP and using the machine gun, while the other 2 had 3 HP but used the spur instead. Remember, a Mimiga hero playthrough means that you lose access to the booster 0.8 or 2.0 depending on what you have, and the only way you'd be able to beat the final boss is to climb up onto its mini cores around it, which, yeah, I don't have the stones to try and do that. Even if the spur would help more in the long run, I decided to go with the loadout I used in my original hard mode playthrough, just so I could have that extra wiggle room in the air with the machine gun. I'd also like to preface the video by saying that this is not a guide for hard mode. Ultimately, this is just a video to share my experience beating this absolutely brutal challenge. But if this can help anyone out there in beating this mode, then that's fantastic. Just don't expect this to be the optimal way to do things. So, with all that said, here's how I beat Cave Story on hard mode as an unbeatable Mimiga hero. To start, I'd like to explain a few things about the way I tend to play difficult video games or challenges. When trying to figure out how to beat challenges like this, I like to find strategies that are consistent above all else. Consistency is one of the things I prioritize the most in these kinds of challenges because, as mentioned before, I get extremely tunnel visioned, meaning I can't see any of the projectiles or enemies around the center of the screen. They'll usually end up blending into the background for me, making them almost invisible, and it gets even worse when I'm focused and in the zone due to a brutally hard segment, like the final boss for example. So any strategies that I show in this playthrough will prioritize consistency. I don't care if there's a more optimal way to do things, these are just how I found things to be easier for me. With that out of the way, let's start this challenge. As usual, I go through the first cave and get the Polar Star, but instead of going right through the eye door, I make sure to grind the enemies enough to where I have level 3 on my gun. You could skip the first Balrog fight, but I always like to take him out just to de-rust. He's extremely easy with the level 3 Polar Star, going down while only able to charge at me once. I get the key to Arthur's house and reach the egg corridor and go through as I normally would. I get to Igor and kick his ass with some speedrun strats I actually found from watching a recent GDQ speedrun. This is probably one of the only fights I'll use speedrun strats since it makes my life easier, and I just keep jumping right before he swipes and he can't do a thing to me. I talk to Sue, go through the egg corridor once again, and then reach Mimiga Village. There's nothing to do here besides talking to Sue and going back inside Arthur's house to reach Grasstown. And yes, I'm calling it Grasstown because I just prefer that over Bushlands. Once I reach Grasstown, I get Santa's key, get the fireball, go to Choco's house so I can get the jellies to spawn, and wait, Choco? Choco. Damn, I didn't think she was down bad like that. Anyway, we go back to get the 3 jelly juice, 1 for the bubbler, which will be useful later, 1 for the charcoal, and 1 to get through Choco's fireplace. I get the key from Malco's room and activate him, watch him get brutally crushed by Balrog, then absolutely cheese Balrog with the bubbler. Its bubbles can deal with all the projectiles he throws my way, so it's a pretty easy fight as long as I dodge his jumps in the second half of the fight. Next, I go back and get a 4th jelly juice to get the gum key, collect the gum, and Oh right, Balfrog. Honestly, the Fireball really is the best weapon for this fight, since the small frogs can't kill you in one hit, and you can pick up any health they might drop. But for me, I just tried to avoid them as much as I could, mainly trying to jump from the fan as Balrog is jumping so that I can avoid a random frog hitting me as I reach the ceiling. Sometimes it might still be unavoidable though. Besides that, it's a pretty easy fight, and I beat it first try. Now we just make the bomb, free Kazuma, and bring him and Booster back to Mimiga Village. Well, more like they crashed into it before we could even reach it. Next, I quickly visit Mimiga Village before I go right onto the sand zone. We see Curly, beat her with the fireball, then make up like nothing ever happened and get the machine gun. This right here is going to make things in sand zone so much more convenient. I go into the back room to pick up the doggo and... yeah, of course I had to pick up the panties. What'd you expect? It's silly. I get through the first part of the area using my newly acquired machine gun and the fireball to get through any enemies that are here. And for the Crocs, I actually found out that as long as you have full horizontal momentum, they can't bite you and just end up missing you. This helped me a lot, as getting their extra XP was great for leveling up my machine gun, even if I didn't end up using it for the Omega fight. Yeah, Omega's a huge pushover. It may seem hectic with all the projectiles he fires, but as long as you keep your cool and spam fireball, he's not an issue. Just watch out for his jumps and aim up to get any stray projectiles that might hit you, and you're golden. Next we have to go on Jenka's Puppy Fetch quest, but since I'm using the Steam version of Cave Story Plus, I unfortunately have to get every single dog one at a time, and it doesn't even have the dog at the very end move to a more convenient place like in the Switch version. It's fine though, I just take my time with the machine gun and go through each area getting the dogs along the way. Something I'd like to mention is that if you're doing a challenge like this, there's absolutely no such thing as saving too much. Saving as often as I had during this run helped reduce the time wasted by having to go through certain areas again, or going through slow dialogue boxes that had to be repeated because I forgot to save. With all 5 dogs gathered and Balrog requiring the warehouse key, it's time to go all the way back to the warehouse and take out whoever's stealing those red flowers. Wait, no! Damn it. This fight always makes me sad because I feel like I could have done something to prevent this, but I just couldn't. It's an easy enough fight once you realize she just has 2 attacks, but damn, it really sucks, even after all my playthroughs I've done. Well, I'll just have to push forward. With King's Sword obtained, I get ambushed by Balrog and sent to the labyrinth. In the first room, I just skipped everything with the machine gun since there would be more than enough enemies in the future to level up the sword. I pick up the turbocharge and eventually reach Curly and Dr. Gero, needing to get the medicine to heal Curly. I get up to Pooh Black, beating him easily with the sword and returning the medicine to the doctor to use on Curly. Now, this next part is one of the reasons I was pulling my hair out during my first hard mode playthrough. Even if you can get through and defeat all the Gaudi in the boss room, said Gaudi contributing to 4 out of 5 of my deaths before I even started the boss fight, the fight itself can be brutal if you don't know what you're doing. This is where my strategy of doing what's consistent really starts to come into play. I make sure to ride on his treads, jumping just before I reach the barrier, jumping again, then jumping a 3rd time just before he stops so that my jumping or movement won't be interrupted by his tread stopping. Seriously, that alone has caused so many deaths because I wasn't prepared for them stopping and sometimes throwing me off, right into the middle of danger. I make sure to get a good, clean level 3 sword hit on one of the green weak points so that the AoE damage can really hurt them all. Then I quickly run in the opposite direction, making sure not to jump so that all of the projectiles can hit the ground. And when I reach the end of the hall, I do a precautionary hover just to be sure I avoid them all. I then repeat this process for the rest of the first phase of the fight. Even if I miss an attack, I don't get greedy and try for another, as most of the time that will just kill me. Once Monster X is in phase 2, I immediately go to the middle and hit his weak spot with my level 3 sword. The main reason I do this is that a lot of the fish missiles he fires will end up being destroyed by the AoE damage, meaning that when he starts moving again, there's less missiles that I have to worry about when avoiding his treads. After about 3 or 4 cycles, depending on my luck, I finally beat him and proceed to the next room. Now, you might think that I get the booster here since I'm not going for the best ending. So I go fight Balrog once again, making sure to jump when he does so that all the rockets launch into the air away from me, giving me plenty of time to attack him. Once he's down, I proceed to the second part of the labyrinth. This is the second section that caused me anguish during my first hard mode playthrough. My main strategy that I like to use is the tried and true option of hovering over everything with a machine gun, at least for the first floor. For the second and third floors, I use a mix of the fireball and machine gun in order to stay a safe distance from enemies and projectiles. Since I have the machine gun, I can also save halfway through once I reach the third floor. Once I reach the end, I enter the core, open the blast doors, save once again so I don't have to do that all over again, and then enter the fight. During the core fight, I like to use only the machine gun, not only for mobility, but also how much damage I can do at the beginning of the fight. In my successful attempt, I was able to almost completely take out his health before he started shooting his energy balls of death at me. Once that's done, I drown, learn about someone named Balos, bet that won't be important later, get saved by Curly, pick up the tow rope so I can save her, then go through the waterway as normal and get all the water out of Curly so I can bring her with me. Again, I could just skip all this since I'm not going for the best ending. That would be mean. I proceed to Ironhead, and since I'm playing on hard mode, I got the alien medal for beating him hitless, and got Nika-chan reference, though it did take me more tries than I'd like to admit. I make it to Mimiga Village once again, and it's looking a bit empty. Huh, maybe there's a party they went to? I got the Booster 2.0 from Booster. Better enjoy it while it lasts because I won't be keeping it for long. I then proceed to the Egg Corridor ? Something seems off about this place, but I can't put my finger on it. I go through as I normally would, dying once due to being stupid, and reach Kazuma, declining his offer to escape the island and instead going up the outer wall with the machine gun as my booster and meeting Ito, then Kanpachi again, then Droll, then wait, Droll? Damn, why didn't any of the other enemies use that strategy? They would have captured me ages ago. I escape prison, now a wanted felon with multiple charges of assault and murder on my belt, and make my way to Momoran to get the rocket built. She steals my booster for the rocket, making me unable to use it for the rest of the run since I'll be keeping the Mimiga mask. I get the sprinkler, give it to Momoran, talk to Ito, give the control to Momoran, rest, then ride the rocket to the top without talking to her, since that would automatically give me back the booster and take away my Mimiga mask. In my first playthrough, I had to rely on the dog since without 8 HP, I couldn't beat the final boss gauntlet, and that meant traveling backwards through the final cave again to get it. This time though, I'll just skip him and go through the final cave as usual, not needing to fight the red demon since I don't have the booster 2.0. My best advice for going through the final cave is to take your time. Take every precaution necessary to get through the final cave unscathed. It's now time for the final area. I make sure to avoid the rabbles on the way so I can immediately save, then hover way over the next rabble and... Igor? Is he Igor? He looks like Igor, but I killed Igor. Is he a twin? A rabble that just happens to look like Igor? I don't know, I always found that confusing. Okay, enough stalling. It's time to get through the boss gauntlet. This sequence alone took me more than half of my recording time, simply due to how difficult the undead core is. Fortunately for the other bosses, I found ways of getting through them most of the time, with some deaths here and there if I'm not paying attention. Fight 1. Misery. Misery's fight is very simple. Every first and second cycle, she will shoot dark energy balls at you, which can be easily avoided, either by hovering or hiding behind the steps if she is on the right side of the arena. Once she summons the dark ring, she'll turn them into bats at the end of every cycle. On the third cycle, she will always summon a block above you, so be sure to not jump in case it does hit you. If you have to, make it a short hop. With the machine gun, she takes at least 6 cycles to beat, as the max 84 damage she takes from it each cycle is just enough to take her out in that many cycles. But depending on my luck, the fight can go on for as much as 12 or more cycles, depending on how many times she decides to not be high enough from the ground to effectively hit her enough. Once that first battle is done, I move on to the Doctor. Fight 2. The Doctor. His first phase is easy enough. Avoid his spinning attack him as much as his crystal will allow, and after the first 4 spinning attacks, he'll teleport in the air to shoot out some projectiles all around. If he's on the right or left side of the arena when he does this, I try and move in the opposite direction, but if he fires in the middle of the arena, then I try my best to go into the center of it. That way most of the projectiles go away from you, and the ones that ricochet back will disappear by the time he fires his next spinning attack. One thing that's killed me a few times in this fight is his randomness when teleporting. Sometimes he'll teleport to the complete opposite side of the arena, and other times he'll teleport right above me and kill me. As long as I avoid that though, I'll be fine. Fight 3. The Muscle Doctor. This is the one fight in the gauntlet that I almost never lose to, since I can just mash the machine gun and hover over him once he summons his bats, as they can't hit me if I hover in any of these locations. One thing I do want to warn about though is that you do not want to be hovering above him in his first form when he goes down, unless you already have some horizontal momentum, since being perfectly above him has a chance to make him instantly deal contact damage once phase 2 starts. Postscript Emily here. Something I'd like to mention that I only just learned as I finished this script while learning how to spell Chaco's name is that you can actually talk to Chaco twice before moving on to the next fight, and hearts will appear to heal you. I think this would have helped me so much if I knew about it beforehand, as some attempts I went into the undead core fight with 1 or 2 health, which would mean I die to even the critters and bats in one hit if I didn't get hearts from them first. So yeah, felt nice to learn something new about a game I thought I knew everything about. Once the Muscle Doctor's done and dusted, I move on to the last fight. The fight that took me days to get a successful attempt on. The Undead Core, along with Possessed Sue and Possessed Misery. Last fight. The Undead Core. And Co. Here's my strategy for this fight. I immediately target Sue, jumping over the first floor wave that the core shoots out and shooting down to ensure she gets staggered and falls back to the ground. I continue my assault, making sure to defeat any critters that Misery sends out. Sue should go down pretty quickly, leaving only Misery to deal with before moving on to the core itself. Misery can be pretty tricky. She only summons critters and bats once either she or Sue take enough damage, so once Sue is defeated she should still be summoning them for a bit. As long as I can damage her with the machine gun a little bit at a time, it will be very rare that she summons her fish missiles. She only summons them once Sue is taken down, so if she does summon them, just be mindful of whether the core is in its first or second cycle, third if it's in the start of the fight, and then the third cycle where it will shoot forward projectiles. Something else I'd like to mention is that during the fight, Misery will actually change the pattern of her fish missiles depending on your equipment. If you don't have the booster, she will only shoot 3 missiles upwards, downwards if you're behind her, but if you do have the booster, she'll shoot 6 missiles, 3 up and 3 down. I always felt that was a nice way of giving the boosterless player some leeway in this fight. If the core is shooting projectiles, just stay on the floor and jump over the ones that get closer to you, and if it's the waves, stay in the air and shoot the core so it stops shooting them. Then proceed to continue shooting Misery. Once Misery eventually goes down, the fight is much easier from here. Just shoot the core when it's in its first and second cycle, then in the third cycle, prioritize avoiding the projectiles. Even if that makes the fight take longer, it's much better than trying to hit him in the air and getting hit by the projectiles. Once he's down to about a fourth of his health, he'll open his mouth and shoot out 3 projectiles, along with 3 large energy balls like in the first core fight. He will then continuously shoot out ground and ceiling waves while he occasionally fires out 3 energy balls. Be sure to stay on the ground once he enters this phase, then be sure to hover to avoid his waves and energy balls. Once he's fired his first 3 spinning projectiles, he will never fire them again, allowing you to easily beat him as long as you stay hovering around the elevation of the stone platforms when he does his energy blasts, since he will never be able to hit you like this. This entire strategy is easier said than done. Even if I know what to do during the fight, the number of times that my tunnel vision has screwed me over is crazy. Sometimes I'll stop paying attention to Sue and get beat by her, sometimes I won't be paying attention to the critters or missiles enough that will kill me, sometimes I wasn't even paying attention enough to the projectiles and those killed me, but using consistent strategies as mentioned earlier in this fight allowed me to get further and further without error, and eventually... With the undead core defeated and the island falling, it's time to make our grand escape. Right. That can happen. The falling blocks. After all that effort, all that time I spent trying to beat the core, I die to the blocks. I felt so defeated at this point. I only tried the fight once more before giving up for the day. Guys, I am telling you, I felt so tempted to just get footage of another hard mode playthrough, heck, even a normal mode playthrough with more health so that I could just go back and show that end segment. I beat the undead core, that's the hardest part. Surely people wouldn't mind if I just left it at that, right? But no, I felt wrong doing that. I had to prove that I could beat the whole game as an unbeatable Mimiga hero. Not 99%, 100%. So the next day, it was back to grinding. After what felt like hours, I finally did it. I beat the core once again and got killed by the blocks, for God's sake! It's fine. It's fine. It took way less time this time. I can do this again. I can do this. And on the very next attempt, I beat the undead core again. Twice in a row? I felt so proud of myself, finally learning the patterns enough to where I could seemingly more consistently beat the core. Now, is the third time the charm? I did it. I finally beat the game as an unbeatable Mimiga hero. This is probably one of my greatest achievements. I never thought I'd be able to beat it, but with enough perseverance, I was finally able to. The game done, the credits rolling, I think it's time I took a nice long break from Cave Story. See you all next time. God, do I even want to try Sanctuary on hard mode? Because, like, God, I beat it 3 HP on easy mode, but, like, then I actually could take hits because it's easy mode. So I already have the unbeatable achievement. I don't have to do it. But